Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Circle Anne Salve Women. For today's article discussion, we are going to be talking about the one I wrote on the victory of right amidst wrong. And so forgive me if I always have to look at the titles. I write, just really from my heart and what I always pray on what it is that is in need to speak through me. And, sometimes it's just you look back at all of the writings that you have created. And for me, I get amazed by it because I just know that those words were coming from my heart. And at the time that I wrote it, you don't always remember what you've written. And I'm sure many writers who have done this, they look back and go, wow, that's amazing how I felt that way and how that was able to be delivered in the manner that it was. And, I tried to always be as real as I can be with the human part in me that takes over sometimes, with the feelings that get involved. And yet my transparency really has allowed me to be feeling empowered, knowing that someone out there can relate. So with this one, the victory of right amidst wrong, this had to do, and this continues to have to do with, when you are involved with your children's events or sporting events and so forth, it's just in the happiness that you get to do your part. And I know when I was going through my master's with my older three, there were times where I was just elated to be in my classroom and knowing that they were close to me as they would practice. And so in the events, they wouldn't realize, not to their fault or so, and, not to even their concern, but you'd be so tired and yet you would have to push through, have this big smile on your face and work around through people and with people and making sure that if we're running an event, we were doing our part and, everyone just partaking and just amazing spirits around you, whether they be dramatic or not. It was always entertaining. And then when you go to other sporting events or that someone else is hosting it, you want to do the same. And, now that I'm really starting to feel my children are at the age where I don't always have to watch over them, and neither does my husband, then I can, and it really, to much of my secret with my first three, the reason why I would always keep myself busy outside of the room is because you can't really give them your nerves, and so it was easier for me to work the concessions, work somewhere else other than just up front. And I know with the second time around with our youngest two, it's this great fight in me that says, okay, wait a minute. It will also give me a repertoire of knowing, or add on to my repertoire of knowing how to do the scoring tables and, whatever it may be that could get me up front in helping out as well. Because there was a time when I was doing my master's and it helped me to just read my book on the side so that I wouldn't always be watching. There's essentially putting up a front in front of others, not for the sake of anybody else, but for your children. If I was to show them that I was nervous, if I was to show them that I had any doubt or so, I just disliked any hint that I gave them, that if I felt that I was giving them. And so I hid a lot secretly to myself, just keeping myself busy. And so now when I do these sporting events, if my husband, who is just an amazing coach, aside from all the other things he does, when he asks me, okay, it's time to collect these fees or so, I'm like, okay. And this last event, I think we only had 6. And so I didn't worry too much, but I do, again, my best to be transparent. And I'm counting up all of the payments that are there in front of parents, making sure that they knew, that I was being honest. Not that I have to prove to anyone that, but that's just me. It's always me when I'm entrusted with something. I wanted to make sure that I joke around a lot. And some people, I realize maybe it's not a joke to them, but for me, it's a way for me to just carry myself through it all and making sure that what I've been asked to do is being delivered in the manner that it should. And so it was very surprising to me something told me in the back of my mind, like maybe I should get a receipt for this one. I even asked my husband, do you think we need a receipt for this one? He's like, nah, don't worry about it, you know? And so I go over there and I'm making this payment, and I realized that the person in charge, you know, had not been there. But I was the first and I was eager to get this out of the way. It was in cash. And again, there was only 6 players, so it didn't really bother me much to be able to hold that amount and then be able to give it right away. And, you know, I'm no points, you know, fingers pointed. To make it short, from the article that I'd written is, you know, not even a week goes by and then my husband's like, you know, looks like they said that we did not give the payment in full. And I'm just thinking to myself, why was it that in the back of my head something told me to get a receipt? Luckily, I had them write, whoever it was that was there, that said, oh, I'll take it, the amount paid in full in cash. And I had, you know, made sure that it was signed and so forth. And I had them keep it because I'm thinking they're the registrar. They shouldn't be able to then, you know, keep all of these in file. I typically would get one myself, but like my husband said, we didn't need to worry. And yet, you know, then all of a sudden your character's being called to question. And you know, there was that slight moment when I found myself irritable, and then I realized, you know what? It's going to happen. You know, no matter how fine-tuned you make your actions to be, no matter how much you feel like you've done all the right, there are going to be those moments where I'm sure many can relate to this, where all of a sudden it's just, you just have to think to yourself, God's armor, you know, going up all the time. And those are the moments where you really have to just keep the faith and keep the strength within you to go, okay, I could be irritated about this, but this would be like fighting a battle that you've already won because you know you've done nothing wrong. And yet, no matter what, the more you would try to defend yourself, I've always had the sense that whenever you try to defend yourself, then people go, oh, look at them. You know, they're trying to defend themselves because they know they've done something. And, you know, it's tough because you're like on, you know, you put up on a forum or a stand and everyone's watching you to see if you're going to do or say something to defend yourself. And I'm more of the one that says, you know, to myself, why? You haven't done anything wrong. And so I guess it's, to say the least, I just chilled and I just made sure that I really thought to myself, this is that moment where no matter what you do, there's going to be people who've already made up your mind that somehow you schemed, and it's okay, you know. And thankfully, even though my husband, with his good heart, they said that we wouldn't have to make any payment of the, you know, the difference or so, even though my husband offered that, which I honestly, that was the only time, honestly, that I was like, what? But, you know, at that point, I'm grateful they said they didn't have to. And I really, truly hope that they found the difference and then realized that it was just a small error. Because, you know, it's not that something that you go back to and have to prove to yourself. You feel like you have, you know, you've done your part. And so just reminding yourself, the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness. I'm holding on to the book that I just finished, the writings of the gods. And so I forgot to tell you, you know, I'm finally finished. I know it took a long time, but there goes another book that then I get to choose from the library. And so, you know, doesn't matter how long you take, it's when it's done, you just, you know, absorb what you've gotten from it. And I learned so many, you know, just fascinating things. I look forward to really running into the pyramid one day. I know I'm going on a tangent here, but, you know, must be said, just fascinating things about Jung. And I believe is it Champollion? My goodness. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And, you know, just, gosh, now I'm really looking to make sure that I've said this correctly. It is. I think so. So, again, if I butchered the name, forgive me. But just amazing race of knowing how to decipher, you know, written messages in the past, and really the hieroglyphs, you know. But in addition to that, they talked about, you know, Sir Isaac Newton. They talked about the end, King Hatshepsut, which I've already known in the past was actually a queen. And I learned even more to confirm that it was 20 years of ruling. And, you know, aside from a and a very young child that could be ruling, but she ruled well, and then somehow there was a reason to erase her name from history. That's how it ended. But in the beginning, there was so much to learn about all these discoveries that at one point, certain temples that we see now, only the top of a 60-foot temple or so was like standing above the sand, and or being buried under the sand, pardon me. And so just amazing stuff. So when you come to to those type of stories, you just realize you are growing. And so coming back into the Victory of Right Amidst Wrong article, I realized that there's so much to learn about the world. And even though we theorize everything, because I think everything is theoretically spoken, there's other than nature, right? The water cycle and things that just is obviously the law of gravitation, all of those things that we can look at and go, okay, it's still like it's just everything is the best answer so far until there's a better answer. And I think that's what's so fascinating about the world. And so for me, I'm always that kind of person that I know I'm not perfect. No one is, and you're always working and growing at the same time. But that's when you find yourself that forgiveness in you that goes, okay, you know what? They're still learning. They're still doing them. And then you are still doing you. And so in the midst of it all, you have to say to yourself, this is how it goes, people. And so again, going back to the armor of God, that's all you've got. And so the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the gospel of the gospel of peace, the shoes of the gospel of peace. And then you have your shield of faith, your helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. All of those things I've always said to myself, like, just stay righteous and you do your best to, and you're going to be judged because that's what people do. They like shortcuts. I'm a teacher. I know sometimes I have to apologize to my students. I'm a mother. Sometimes I have to apologize to my children when I jump to the conclusion and make some assumptions, and then I find myself wrong, or that they have, corrected me. And I'm thankful for that, because I am always looking for growth. Now, essentially, you always feel like there's that reciprocation also. You're helping those around you to grow as well, but that's what we do for each other. We take care of each other so that we're a stronger place in this world, and we're just stronger together no matter what. And so for me, in Psalms it says, my defense is of God, which saveth the upright in heart. When you continue to just be in that upright, when you continue to be of goodness in the midst of it all, no matter if someone were to try to question your character, question your actions, question your choices, it's in that heart right there, your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit. You just have to say to yourself, these are the things that I am drawn to do, and I'm doing me. And at the end of the day, that's who you have to look at in the mirror. That's who I always think to myself, present yourself in front of the throne and saying, did I do everything that I'm supposed to do? And I do it well, and that I live well, is my character in place where I can say, wow, that's how I lived, and those are the choices I made. And so these are things that can be spoken of and written about. And even if it weren't, because think about it, King Hatshepsut, which was a female, they tried to eliminate all of her history in anything that was written or anything that was drawn out, or however you may say it, and just because predominantly, who knows for what reason. It could be that it would have caused a lot of uproar in history, or that they found all of a sudden after 20 years or so we shouldn't have a woman leader and so forth. And yet there are those people who have just done good because it's the right thing to do, and so that's my message, is at the end of it all, just continue to do the right thing. And even if or that you feel or you sense that those around you are trying to take you down or find a flaw in you, they might, but if you can live with those flaws, and you just know that no one is perfect. In the striving for excellence, you have to embrace that imperfection. And so I look at it from that perspective, and I know that in that moment of aha, and where in this book, I think it was Champollion that would say eureka, just amazing, where you learn, oh, that's the term, that's where it came from. I think the expression was perhaps said prior to that, but that it was brought in the story. So just to make that clarification, but just I don't know how to say enough of this growing that all of us are going through, where we have to understand that we can't be so hurt. That's real. Hurt is real, but you can't be so taken down for all to a point where all of a sudden you have to change you, when you know that you are doing the best you can to do right. So in the words of my mother, God bless us all. Continue to do you, continue to be you, continue to just grow along with you. And you know what? Let the world question who you are, because that's going to make you reflect on who you are becoming, and embrace that. As long as you know that you are in goodness, and that you have all the right intentions to grow into a better you, then that's absolutely what you want to head toward. You don't want it where all of a sudden you start to feel like you have to defend yourself at all times, because that's tiring. Defending yourself when you've already exonerated yourself from any wrong actions, there's really no need to prove to anybody else who's already probably found you guilty, regardless of whatever it may be that they're trying to dig. And so it's okay, just embrace that truth in you, and continue to have that armor that you have been given so wonderfully to really just have on every time. Have a great day, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.